It was the first weekend of July 2017 when two families from Asheville, North Carolina, decided to escape the noise of everyday life. The Morgans and the Whitfields had been neighbors for nearly a decade, raising their children side by side. That summer, they planned something simple: a 3-day mountain getaway in the Blue Ridge. A place they'd visited before for short hikes but never for an overnight trip. The fathers packed fishing rods, the mothers filled coolers with food, and the kids were buzzing with excitement. The group of 12 set out early on a Friday morning, driving into SUVs loaded with tents, sleeping bags, lanterns, and enough supplies to last several days. Their destination was a remote stretch of trail near Cold Hollow, Georgia. Place not well known to outsiders, but cherished by locals who loved its hidden waterfalls and untouched beauty. Witnesses at a gas station remembered seeing them laughing, buying snacks for the kids, and joking about leaving civilization behind. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. By late afternoon, cell signals began to fade as they wound their way deeper into the mountains. The last phone activity recorded from either family was a quick text sent at 5:14 p.m. Just a short message from one of the mothers to her sister that read, "We're almost there. Don't worry if you don't hear from us." That would be the last time anyone ever received communication from them. Hours later, the mountain roads grew dark. But no one noticed anything unusual at the time. On Saturday, family members back home thought little of the silence. After all, camping trips were meant for disconnecting. But when Sunday passed without a single call, text, or update, unease began to set in. By Monday morning, when both families failed to return as scheduled, relatives reported them missing. Authorities were immediately alarmed to entire households, gone without a trace. Deputies drove up the winding mountain road toward Cold Hollow Ridge, expecting to find a broken-down car or maybe families stranded near a campsite. Instead, they found nothing. The roads were clear, the trail entrances undisturbed, and not a single vehicle belonging to the families was anywhere in sight. It was as if 12 people, 2 mothers, 2 fathers, and 8 children had vanished into the wilderness without leaving so much as a footprint behind. By sunrise on Monday, a full-scale search and rescue mission was underway. Deputies, park rangers, and dozens of volunteers gathered at the base of Cold Hollow Ridge, ready to comb the dense forest. At first, optimism ran high. 2 families, including children, couldn't have gone far, and rescuers believed they'd stumble across a stalled vehicle, a burned-out campfire, or maybe a group waiting patiently for help. But as the first hours passed, the optimism quickly began to fade. Helicopters were dispatched to sweep across the mountains, their spotlights cutting through the early morning mist. From above, searchers hoped to see tents, campfires, or even signs of movement. Yet the aerial sweeps revealed nothing. The forest canopy was so thick, it was like a solid wall of green impenetrable, hiding whatever might be below. Pilots reported back in frustration. It's as if the ground just swallowed them. Meanwhile, teams of bloodhounds were brought in to follow the scent from clothing given by relatives. At first, the dogs appeared eager, noses to the dirt, pulling handlers toward the trail. But strangely, only a few hundred yards in, the dogs stopped, circled in confusion, and then lay down as if the trail simply ended. Handlers tried again and again, starting from different points. But the result was always the same. The scent vanished into thin air. Volunteers, equipped with flashlights, whistles, and radios, formed grid lines to search the terrain foot by foot. They scoured creek beds, overturned rocks, and even checked abandoned cabins rumored to exist deeper in the woods. Every night, the searchers returned weary, empty-handed, and baffled. No discarded water bottles, no scraps of food packaging, no shoe prints in the mud, nothing. Experienced rescuers admitted they had never seen a case so devoid of physical evidence. By the end of the week, the search had grown into one of the largest in the county's history. Hundreds of people joined, spreading out across nearly 50 square miles of wilderness. The families' names and photographs appeared on posters, in newspapers, and on TV screens across the state. But despite the massive effort, the Blue Ridge Mountains gave back no answers. It was as if 12 lives had been erased, leaving behind only questions that grew darker with every passing day. As days turned into weeks, frustration grew, and the absence of answers gave rise to speculation. Reporters flooded the small mountain town, pressing locals for insight into what might have happened. Some residents were quick to dismiss the mystery with practical explanations. Perhaps the families had gotten lost, injured, or even swept away by one of the fast-moving rivers that cut through the valley. But even those theories faltered when investigators reminded everyone that no gear, no tracks, and not even abandoned vehicles had been found. It was as though the families had never set foot on the mountain at all. Wildlife experts weighed in, suggesting that a bear or mountain lion encounter could have spooked the group, driving them off trail. Yet seasoned rangers immediately shut that theory. Down and animal attacks left evidence: blood-torn fabric, tracks. Here, there was none. It was impossible for 12 people, including grown adults, to be dragged off by predators without leaving a single shred of proof behind. The animal theory quickly lost ground, but it did little to calm the growing unease in the community. Others turned to more sinister explanations. Rumors spread that the families had staged their own disappearance, backing up, abandoning their homes and starting fresh under new identities. But investigators found no financial irregularities, no secret bank accounts, no signs of planning. Their homes were filled with half-finished chores, unwashed dishes in the sink, children's homework lying on the kitchen tables. Everything about their lives suggested they intended to return. The planned disappearance idea collapsed under its own weight. That was when darker whispers began to take hold. Locals spoke of the mountain's long-standing reputation for strange happenings. Cold Hollow Ridge, they said, had always been different. For decades, hikers had reported eerie echoes, sudden shifts in temperature, or the unnerving sensation of being watched. Campfire stories told of people stepping off the trail and never coming back, swallowed by the wilderness. Some claimed the ridge was cursed, a place that demanded sacrifices from those who lingered too long after nightfall. The most unsettling theory emerged late, one night in a crowded diner, when an elderly man leaned across the table and said, "The mountain doesn't let everyone leave." Its word spread like wildfire. People began to believe the families hadn't just gotten lost or run away, they had been taken. Whether by the forest itself, by something hidden within it, or by forces beyond understanding, no one could say. But the idea lingered, growing stronger with each day that passed without answers. The first strange report came nearly 3 months after the search was officially suspended. A hunter named Caleb Turner claimed he heard the unmistakable sound of children's laughter deep in the woods near Cold Hollow Ridge. At first, he thought nothing of it. Perhaps a family had ignored the warnings and gone camping. But when he followed the sound, the laughter abruptly stopped, leaving only the rustle of leaves in the wind. He stood frozen, rifle in hand, realizing he was miles from any known campsite. Disturbed, he left the mountain and swore he would never return. Soon after, campers began coming forward with unsettling stories. One group claimed they discovered a scrap of fabric snagged on a tree branch nearly 20 feet off the ground. The cloth looked torn, weathered, and oddly familiar, similar to a child's pajama top. By the time rangers were led back to the spot, however, the fabric was gone. No trace of it remained, and the campers were left questioning their own memory. Some said it was just their eyes playing tricks on them. Others weren't so sure. Locals also whispered about faint lights flickering in the forest at night. Hikers described orbs as soft white or pale blue that seemed to drift just ahead of them on the trail, always keeping their distance. Those who tried to follow the lights reported sudden disorientation, as if the forest itself shifted and rearranged. Many turned back, shaken, while others admitted they left the mountain entirely, unable to shake the feeling that something unseen was guiding them away. Investigators, too, were not immune to strange experiences. One ranger admitted, off the record, that while searching an overgrown ravine, he found a child's footprint pressed into the mud, fresh and clear. Though the families had been missing for months, when he returned with colleagues to collect evidence, the footprint was gone, the mud smooth as if nothing had ever been there. He later confessed he wished he'd taken a photo, but at the time, he was too unsettled to think clearly. Over the years, the stories accumulated like puzzle pieces that refused to fit together. A flashlight beam catching what looked like a shadow darting between trees. A distant scream echoing across the ridgeline, only to fade into silence. Radios picking up strange bursts of static when turned toward a certain part of the trail. Each clue fueled the mystery, making it harder to dismiss the possibility that something far stranger than simple misadventure had unfolded on Cold Hollow Ridge. As the months slipped into years, the case of the missing. Families faded from the headlines. The search parties disbanded, the posters yellowed with rain, and the once bustling command center at the ranger station stood empty. But for the locals who lived in the shadow of Cold Hollow Ridge, the story never went away. It lingered in whispered conversations, in glances exchanged whenever someone mentioned the mountain. And in the quiet unease that seemed to settle over the town after dark, the homes of the Morgans and the Said El Oza, the Whitfields became frozen in time. Eerie reminders of lives abruptly interrupted. Toys still littered the children's bedrooms. Cereal boxes sat half empty in the kitchen cabinets, and laundry baskets remained half folded. Nothing had been touched since that summer day in 2017. Relatives couldn't bring themselves to pack anything away, as if doing so would mean admitting the families were never coming back. The houses, though structurally sound, grew lifeless, their yards overrun with weeds, and their windows staring blankly at the street like abandoned eyes. Meanwhile, Cold Hollow Ridge itself developed a darker reputation. Seasoned hikers who once bragged about conquering its trails began steering clear of it. Campers swore they heard footsteps trailing them in the woods, only to turn and find no one there. Some even claimed the forest felt heavier, as if it carried the weight of the missing. Local outfitters quietly stopped recommending the area, and eventually signs were put up warning visitors to stay out after dusk. It wasn't an official closure, but it was as close as the county dared to get. Every anniversary of the disappearance, small vigils were held in town. Families lit candles, prayed, and left flowers on the courthouse steps. But with each passing year, fewer people showed up. The case had no answers, and hope was slowly replaced by unease. The longer the silence stretched, the less likely it seemed that the families would ever be found alive, or found at all. Yet the absence of bodies, belongings, or any definitive trace kept the wound open. It was a mystery that refused to heal, and still, there were those who swore the mountain had not gone quiet. Late-night truckers on the back roads claimed to see flickering lantern light moving through the trees where no one should be. Hunters spoke of hearing children's voices carried on the wind. For 6 long years, the ridge remained untouched. A place avoided out of fear, its silence more terrifying than any noise could ever be. It was as if the forest itself was waiting for what? No one knew. It was late autumn of 2023 when the silence surrounding Cold Hollow Ridge finally cracked. A team of park rangers had been tasked with surveying erosion damage along one of the lesser-used trails, part of the forest untouched since the disappearance 6 years earlier. The day was gray, the air brittle with cold, and the leaves formed a thick carpet underfoot. One ranger's boot caught on something hard beneath the soil and moss. At first he thought it was just an old tree root, but when he brushed the leaves aside, a strap appeared. A strap from a backpack. The pack was caked in mud, its fabric stiff with age, yet surprisingly intact. As the team began carefully clearing the area, more straps emerged, then another pack, and another. In total, 6 backpacks lay clustered together, half buried, as though the forest had been slowly swallowing them. None were shredded, none bore teeth marks, and none showed signs of violent struggle. They looked simply left behind. For the first time in 6 years, there was physical evidence that the families had once been there. Inside, the rangers found items that were unsettling in their normalcy. Children's sneakers, still tied. Unopened granola bars, their wrappers faded but sealed. A compass, rusted at the edges but functional. One bag contained a family's digital camera, its battery long dead but its memory card intact. Each item was logged, sealed, and carried back with reverence as though they were relics of a tragedy no one yet understood. What chilled the rangers most was how undisturbed it all seemed, as if the families had set the packs down with the intention of returning for them, yet never did. When the photos on the memory card were finally recovered, investigators and relatives braced for answers. The first few images were ordinary, even heartwarming. The children roasting marshmallows, the parents smiling near a campfire, the families standing together against the backdrop of the ridge. But the final photo was different. Blurry, dark, and off-center, it appeared to have been taken in haste. The flash had caught the outline of the trees and, faintly visible between them, a tall, indistinct figure standing just beyond the firelight. The discovery should have brought clarity, but instead, it deepened the mystery. How had the backpacks remained hidden for 6 years, only to surface now? Why were they grouped together, untouched, with food still sealed inside? And who or what was the figure caught in that final photograph? The rangers had no answers. All they knew was that the mountain had finally given something back. But whatever truth lay buried within Cold Hollow Ridge was still out there, waiting. The release of the rangers' findings reignited public interest, pulling the case back into the spotlight after years of silence. News stations aired the photographs on repeat, zooming in on the final blurry image. Online forums exploded with speculation, some insisting the figure in the background was a trick of the light, others swearing it was human, and a few arguing it looked like nothing human at all. Theories multiplied overnight, but answers remained as elusive as ever. Families of the missing gathered once again, this time with renewed grief. The discovery of the backpacks proved that their loved ones had indeed made it onto Cold Hollow Ridge, but the absence of any bodies, footprints, or belongings beyond those bags left more questions than comfort. Why would they just leave everything behind? One relative asked at a press conference, her voice breaking. Where were they going, and why didn't they ever come back for their children's things? No one had an explanation. Even seasoned investigators admitted that the case defied logic. If the families had succumbed to the elements, their remains would have been found. If they had fallen victim to foul play, there should have been signs of a struggle. And if they had walked away willingly, why abandon essential supplies? The evidence painted a picture of families who were prepared, content, and even joyful until something or someone intervened. What that something was remained maddeningly out of reach in town. The discovery rekindled the old legends of Cold Hollow Ridge. Locals began repeating warnings, once spoken only in whispers: don't stay on the trails after sunset, don't follow the lights, and above all, don't answer if you hear laughter in the woods. Parents cautioned children not to wander too close to the foothills, and hunters began carrying charms or old family talismans, convinced the forest demanded respect or perhaps fear. The mountain was no longer just a backdrop to the community. It had become a living, breathing enigma. And so, the unanswered mystery hangs heavy over the region. The forest remains vast, silent, and unyielding, holding its secrets beneath layers of moss and shadow. The backpacks may have been a breadcrumb trail, a reminder that the missing once walked those paths. But with no resolution, no closure, and no evidence beyond those 6 bags. Cold Hollow Ridge still whispers a question that no one dares answer. What really happened to the 12 souls who vanished into its depths? And that's where the trail ends. 12 people gone without a trace. Their final belongings discovered years later in the heart of a mountain that has taken more than it's ever given back. To this day, no bodies have been found, no definitive answers uncovered, and no explanation accepted as truth. Theories swirl, legends grow. But the silence of Cold Hollow Ridge remains unbroken. So maybe the question isn't where these families went, but what was waiting for them when the sun went down. Because sometimes, the scariest mysteries aren't the ones we can solve. They're the ones that never let us go. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.